They chained her. They paraded her through the streets of Rome in golden shackles, displayed before a roaring mob as proof of their empire's reach. They thought they had broken her, but no Roman shackle could contain what ran through her veins: the blood of pharaohs, the will of conquerors, and the fury of a continent entire. This is not a story of defeat. This is the story of a queen. Before the Roman Empire rewrote history in its own image, there was an Africa it feared, a continent of dynasties, of warrior bloodlines, of queens who bent empires to their will. Today, that Africa speaks. If you have ever wanted the truth that mainstream textbooks buried, then stay with us, because every second of this video exists for one reason alone: to give back what was taken. This channel exists to restore the African narrative. Hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications, because what you are about to witness is the history they never taught in school, and it begins with a 10-year-old girl in golden chains who would one day rebuild a kingdom from nothing. The year is approximately 40 BC. The setting is Alexandria, Egypt, at this moment the wealthiest, most intellectually advanced city on the face of the earth. The great library still stands, the harbor still gleams, and inside the royal palace a child is born under a moon that, according to the customs of the Ptolemaic court, names her Selene, the moon. Her full name is Cleopatra Selene II. Her mother is Cleopatra VII Philopator, the reigning pharaoh of Egypt, the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a woman who spoke 9 languages including Egyptian and Ethiopian, and who ruled one of the most powerful kingdoms in the ancient world. Her father is Mark Antony, Roman general and political titan. Cleopatra Selene II is born twin to her brother Alexander Helios, the sun. She is the moon. Together they represent the celestial bodies her mother believed she could align in her favor. Here, the narrator pauses to make something clear, something that Western history has long obscured. The Ptolemaic dynasty, though Greek in origin, had by this period been thoroughly absorbed into African civilization. Cleopatra VII was not simply a Greek ruler wearing an Egyptian crown. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler in over 200 years to speak the Egyptian language. She worshipped Egyptian gods. She dressed as Isis. She was, in the fullest cultural, spiritual, and political sense, an African queen, and her daughter Cleopatra Selene II inherited every dimension of that identity. Egypt was not a colony of Rome. It was not a province. It was an independent African kingdom with millennia of civilizational history behind it, and in 40 BC it was under existential threat. The Roman Republic had given way to civil war, and the most powerful man in the Western world, Octavian, the future Augustus Caesar, had his eyes fixed on Alexandria. He wanted its grain, he wanted its treasury, and he wanted to end the bloodline of Cleopatra forever.
Cleopatra Selene II was born into this gathering storm. She was raised in a palace that already knew it was surrounded. From the earliest years of her life, she understood, as all royal children in threatened dynasties understand, that she was not simply a child. She was a political instrument, a dynastic continuation, a living declaration that Egypt would endure. The Battle of Actium, September 2nd, 31 BC. Off the western coast of Greece, the combined naval fleet of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony faces the Roman forces of Octavian. It is one of the most consequential naval engagements in recorded history, not merely because of what Rome wins, but because of what Africa loses. Antony and Cleopatra's fleet is routed. They retreat to Egypt. Within a year, both are dead. Mark Antony, receiving false reports of Cleopatra's death, falls on his own sword. Cleopatra VII, refusing to be paraded through Rome as a conquered prize, takes her own life on August 12, 30 BC. She is 39 years old. Her daughter, Cleopatra Selene, is 10 years old. Egypt falls. The most powerful independent African kingdom in the ancient Mediterranean is absorbed into the Roman Empire as a personal province of Augustus Caesar, not even a standard Roman province, but his private possession. Alexandria's treasury is seized. Its grain routes are redirected to Rome. Its royal family is eliminated, with one calculated exception. Cleopatra Selene and her twin brother Alexander Helios are taken alive. They are transported to Rome, where in 29 BC, Augustus Caesar stages his triumph, the Roman ritual celebration of military victory. The children of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony are led through the streets of Rome in golden chains, displayed before hundreds of thousands of Roman citizens. Ancient sources, including the Roman historian Cassius Dio, document this event. She is 11 years old. The narrator does not present this as a moment of Roman glory. He presents it as what it is, the public humiliation of an African child, staged by an empire to declare its dominion over an entire continent. Rome displayed her in golden chains because she represented something that terrified them, the living continuity of African royal power, and yet in doing so, Rome made a fatal miscalculation. It kept her alive. After the triumph, Cleopatra Selene is placed in the household of Octavia Minor, the sister of Augustus Caesar and the former wife of Mark Antony. Her twin brother Alexander Helios disappears from the historical record entirely. Her younger brother Ptolemy Philadelphus also vanishes. Selene alone survives. In the household of her father's former wife, in the capital of the empire that destroyed her family, she grows up, and she watches, and she learns. Rome in the late 1st century BC is not simply a military power, it is an intellectual and political laboratory. Augustus is in the process of transforming the Roman Republic into an empire, and his household and the households of his closest circle are among the most sophisticated political environments in the world. Cleopatra Selene grows up inside this environment.
She speaks Greek and Latin. She absorbs Roman law, Roman political structure, Roman military organization, and Roman court diplomacy, all of it filed away, all of it studied with the precision of someone who knows that knowledge, in the absence of an army, is the only weapon left. She watches how Augustus consolidates power. She watches how client kingdoms are managed, how provincial governors are appointed, how alliances are made and broken. She is being educated by her captor, and she is learning everything. Also present in the imperial household and its social circle are other captured African and Eastern royals. Among them is a young man named Juba II, the son of Juba I, the defeated king of Numidia in North Africa. Juba II was brought to Rome as an infant following his father's defeat by Julius Caesar in 46 BC. He has grown up within the Roman system as a man of remarkable intellectual breadth, a historian, a geographer, and a scholar whose written works, now largely lost, but extensively cited by later authors, including Pliny the Elder, covered subjects ranging from the history of Africa to the natural world. Two African royals, stripped of their thrones and raised inside the empire that took them, studying, watching, surviving. The connection between Cleopatra Selene II and Juba II is documented in ancient sources. What is not documented, but is strategically unmistakable, is what they were building in their shared silence. As the narrator states plainly, Rome thought it had taken everything from these two people. It had in fact given them the greatest weapon available to any ruler, complete knowledge of the enemy. Around 25 BC, Augustus Caesar makes what he believes is a masterful political calculation. He arranges the marriage of Cleopatra Selene II and Juba II and installs them as client rulers of the kingdom of Mauretania, a vast territory in northwestern Africa corresponding to modern Morocco and the northwestern regions of Algeria. From Rome's perspective, this is elegant statecraft. Two former captives, raised Roman, now serving as Rome's administrators in a strategically important corner of Africa. Loyal, grateful, controllable. Augustus had never been more wrong. From the moment Cleopatra Selene II sets foot in Mauretania, she begins rebuilding. The capital, Caesarea, present-day Charchel in Algeria, is transformed under her co-reign into one of the most culturally sophisticated cities in Africa. Juba II fills its library with scrolls from across the known world. Its harbor is expanded for international trade. Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Berber artistic traditions are woven into its public architecture. It becomes, under the joint rule of these two African royals, a center of learning and commerce that rivals the great cities of the Mediterranean. But it is the Egyptian dimension that reveals Cleopatra Selene II's true agenda. She introduces the worship of Isis, the Egyptian mother goddess and the divine figure most associated with the Polytolaic dynasty, into Mauretania. She commissions architecture bearing Egyptian motifs. And most significantly, she mints coins. These coins are among the most important archaeological artifacts of the ancient African world. On them, Cleopatra Selene II depicts herself not as a Roman client queen, but as a Polytolaic pharaoh, the Macedonian star, the crescent moon. Her face, her name, her dynasty. She is not administering a Roman province, she is reconstituting a kingdom.
The scholarly record on these coins is substantial. Numismatists and historians, including Dwayne Roller in his foundational work on Juba II and Cleopatra Selene, document the deliberate Egyptian iconography she employed. This was not decoration. In the ancient world, coinage was political declaration. To mint a coin was to assert sovereignty. Cleopatra Selene II was telling anyone with eyes to see the Ptolemaic line did not end in Alexandria. It continued here, in Africa, on her terms. The resistance that Cleopatra Selene II wages is not fought with armies, or at least not openly. It is fought with culture, with identity, with the deliberate, sustained reconstruction of everything Rome tried to erase. This is the nature of the most enduring form of warfare.
not the kind that destroys an enemy's walls, but the kind that outlasts them. She names her son Ptolemy. Not a Roman name, not a Mauretanian name, Ptolemy, the dynastic name of Egypt's royal house, the name that had carried African pharaonic power for 3 centuries. In naming her heir Ptolemy, Cleopatra Selene II sends an unambiguous message to Rome. This bloodline is not finished. The dynasty continues, and it continues on African soil, in an African kingdom, beyond Rome's ability to extinguish it. The court of Caesarea under Cleopatra Selene II and Juba II becomes a convergence point for African intellectual and cultural life. Scholars and artists from Egypt, Numidia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Berber territories of the interior pass through its halls. Juba II's own scholarly output, documented by later ancient sources, reflects the breadth of this African intellectual network. He writes about the geography of Africa, about the sources of the Nile, about the fauna of the continent's interior. These are not the writings of a Roman collaborator. They are the writings of an African intellectual reclaiming his continent's knowledge. Mauretania under their joint rule also demonstrates a degree of independent foreign policy that Rome's client kingdom framework technically prohibited. Trade routes are developed that move goods across Africa without routing through Roman-controlled ports. Diplomatic contacts with neighboring African peoples, the Gaetulians, the Gadamantes, the communities of the Saharan interior, are maintained with an autonomy that suggests Mauretania saw itself as an African power, not a Roman suburb.
This is the dimension of Cleopatra Selene II's story that history has most thoroughly buried. She was not simply surviving, she was governing, she was building. She was, by every measurable standard, a co-ruler of consequence, not a consort, not a figurehead, but an active political intelligence shaping the destiny of a kingdom. The coins confirm it. She and Juba II are depicted as equals. In a world where Rome had made the subjugation of women and of Africans a structural feature of its empire, she refused both. Around 6 BC, Cleopatra Selene II disappears from the historical record. No documented cause of death, no recorded funeral. The exact circumstances of her end remain, to this day, unknown. The historian Dwayne Roller notes the absence of evidence and its suspicious character. A queen of her profile, active in coinage, documented in court records, politically significant enough to have attracted a dedicatory poem from the Roman poet Crinagoras of Mytilene, does not simply vanish without cause. The silence around her death is itself a historical artifact. What survives her, rising from the Algerian coastal plain outside the city of Tipasa, is one of the most magnificent and least discussed funerary monuments in all of Africa, the Royal Mausoleum of Mauretania. It is a massive circular stone structure, approximately 61 meters in diameter and over 32 meters tall, constructed on a promontory overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. It was built to hold royalty. Most historians identify its primary occupant as Cleopatra Selene II herself. It stands today. It has stood for over 2,000 years, and the majority of the world's population has never heard of it. The erasure of Cleopatra Selene II from mainstream historical consciousness is not an accident. It is a consequence of the way Western historiography has for centuries organized the ancient world with Rome at its center. In this framework, the children of Cleopatra VII are footnotes in the story of Augustus. Mauretania is a minor client kingdom on the edge of the map. African agency, the idea that African rulers were making strategic choices, building institutions, and resisting imperial erasure, does not fit the narrative architecture of Roman triumph. And yet, the evidence exists. The coins are in museums, the mausoleum still stands, the ancient textual references, Cassius Dio, Strabo, Pliny, Crinagoras, are available to any scholar willing to look. The historical record has not lost Cleopatra Selene II. It has chosen not to emphasize her. There is a difference, and that difference is a political choice, not a scholarly one.
Cleopatra Selene was born in a palace under threat. She was paraded in chains before an empire's mob. She watched her mother choose death over submission, watched her brothers disappear from history, grew up in the household of her captor. And from all of that, from every instrument of erasure Rome deployed against her, she built a kingdom. She preserved a dynasty. She planted Egyptian civilization in North African soil so deeply that it took 2 millennia of deliberate historical neglect to obscure it. Her story belongs to the larger and unbroken continuum of African sovereignty, the truth that Africa has never been, at any point in human history, a passive recipient of other people's civilizations. It has been always a generator of them. Cleopatra Selene is one point in that continuum. She stands alongside the pharaohs of Kush, the queens of Aksum, the rulers of Mali and Songhai and Great Zimbabwe, not as an exception, but as a confirmation. To speak her name correctly, to say Cleopatra Selene, Queen of Mauretania, daughter of Cleopatra VII, last heir of the Ptolemaic throne, builder of Caesarea, minter of pharaonic coins on the Atlantic coast of Africa, is an act of historical restoration. Every time her full story is told, Rome's triumph loses a little more of its power. Every time a viewer watches this video to the end, the erasure fails a little more. They chained her body. They could not chain her bloodline. They buried her name. And yet, here she stands. Cleopatra Selene did not survive Rome by accident. She survived by strategy, by intelligence, by the unbreakable will of a continent flowing through her veins. And now, you carry her story. Share this video, because every share is one more person who can never again say they did not know. Like this video if Africa's true history deserves to be heard. Subscribe to this channel, because this is only one story of thousands still waiting to be told. And tell us in the comments, what part of her life hit you the hardest? Was it the chains? The coins? The mausoleum still standing on the Algerian coast right now? Let us know. Africa's history is not a footnote. It is the first chapter, and we are just getting started.